Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar from MARG on audit and finance trends. We are from MARG Business Transformation. MARG Business Transformation is a training and consulting company based in Bangalore for the last 12 years. We are into finance, leadership development, change management, and other trainings, areas of trainings in and consulting. Finance have always been an area where changes have been primarily been driven by regulations. But now, in this era of automation and digitization, we are seeing unprecedented changes in audit and finance. Today, we present to you this webinar, which is being hosted and led by Anand Prakash Jangid. Anand is a chartered accountant and a certified information system auditor. His areas of expertise are forensic audit, IS audit, fraud analytics, and blockchain for internal audit function. With this background on risk management and specializations in forex audit, DP audits, he's the best person to take us through as what is going on currently in this finance and audit areas with the current changes happening. So over to you, Anand.
Thanks, Sudeshna. Very good afternoon, everyone. And let me just share my screen and we can start further.
Anand, you're on mute.
Okay, thanks, Sudeshna. Sorry. So once again, a very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. As Sudeshna rightly said, this is one of the area where very, very close to our heart in terms of what we see today, the finance and audit transformation which is happening. And one of the point which many of the people are not able to appreciate is why is that happening and why it is happening at a breakneck speed, the speed at which it's all changing. And I'm sure as all of you finance and audit leaders out there, you would be knowing and you're seeing it yourself that the transformation which we used to see happening at our it has to be actually being managed in a way that the impact is being seen in every facet of finance and audit. So I will just start with a check-in first, the way we would like to have your attention on. And that is something which is what is this things which is impacting us all and why it is very important for finance leaders to understand and appreciate this change, and also what are the things or the tools which are there in our hand which can help us exploit the situation in a better way, and also ensure that we have all the tools and traits in our way. So I'll just start with this picture. I see this picture, and I'm sure all of you have heard about a term called Luddites. If you have not, I would highly recommend you to Google this word or search it on dictionary. This would be the word called Luddites, and if you use this word, the Luddites are basically a kind of a slang which is used for people who have tough challenge managing or working with technology, and they are the people who don't appreciate that, and they are the people who would always have challenge in terms of using that in the right way. Now, where does this word come from? That's a very interesting thing altogether. When the first industrial revolution happened, which was like when we had steam engines coming up, so most of the pigeons of the garment industry, those are the people who basically used to operate between 1811 and 1816. And these were the guys who basically used to do disruption, or the different kind of disruption, I would say. They used to go and burn all the factories which were set up, all the automation which used to be there. They used to just go there and they were saying, hey, you know what? We are skilled laborers, and when you go for machines, even the unskilled laborers can actually do the stuff which we are doing. So, is there a way where we can actually ensure that all these things, are not there and we can actually do it? So they tried for 5 years. That's not a small thing, persistence, you would say. But despite that, we all know what happens. The first industrial revolution did went through, and we saw a lot of automations and in terms of steam in the garment industry which came up along with that. Now, what was the message I wanted to give you from this concept is, whenever any new kind of transformations are coming, there are going to be people who will say, hey, you know what, this is not right. It is going to impact a lot of work the way we were doing it. But we all know the only thing which is constant is change. I really like one of the, it's a cliche now, but it's a very interesting tagline. It's just used at some of the Indian oil corporations training program. They use a word called change before you're forced to change. Now, my thought process is to try to see what is the interlink between finance and audit transformation, which is happening, and what we call as the fourth industrial revolution. So, without much ado, I will deep dive into the roadmap for today's discussion. What we would like to do it. We'll start with the check-in, which I already talked about, and then, friends, I would like to actually talk about something which we call now the kinetic finance transformation. It's actually a new word which is being used extensively in the circles. And why did they use it? There is a reason for that. I'll be talking about that. And let me talk about the pillars, the four pillars which are there of kinetic finance transformation, which is impacting it. When I say finance, it actually means finance, risk, audit, everything all together. Now, this is the things which we like to take this forward. So let me just give you this background or the genesis of what is this whole concept of kinetic business transformation. Now, I'm sure you are hearing this word again and again, the fourth industrial revolution. And the fourth industrial revolution concept, if you see, comes from World Economic Forum. I would highly recommend you to go to the site of World Economic Forum and read more into that. Because of paucity of time, I would like to focus more on what we would like to have a key takeaway. But just to give you a background, very quick background on this, I would say when we talk about this fourth industrial revolution, it's just started from industry 1.0, which was mechanization and steam power, which came initially, moving to what we call it industry 2.0. And you see the timeline, it's very interesting. I like this infographic a lot, and I've taken it from World Economic Forum, and they just said 1784 the kickoff started. It started in 1784, but the peak, what we call it as like the top of the slope, came little late. It came in something around the 1830s. And similarly, Industry 2.0, which was mass production, assembly line, use of electrical energy, it started in 1870, but the peak came in the 1940s. If you remember, I'm sure many of you would have gone through this famous video of Charlie Chaplin in a movie called Modern Times, which came in 1934. And that movie has Charlie Chaplin in a factory. He goes into the machines, comes out, and he has amazing things where there is a machine which feeds humans and all that kind of thing. So it was very fun, but you should know that it happened at the peak of Industry 2.0, which was basically mass production, assembly line, and electrical energy being used extensively. Now, and then came our third industrial revolution, and it's very important for us that once we go into the fourth industrial, we understand third. Now, third actually started in something in 1969, and the peak it got was in 2010. And we all know about that because somehow or other, most of us have been connected with Industry 3.0, which is automations, computers, electronics, which we see across the thing. But what has happened is this industry has already reached its peak, Industry 3. I'll just give you one example of a very interesting analogy which was given to me by one of the gentlemen who is actually a leader in the field of audit. He just said to me one thing, that Anand, if you take two industries, let's take IBM representing the IT industry and Volkswagen representing the automobile industry. You take these two industries and then you try to analyze the growth from 1980 onward. And you will be shocked that if you see the development of the microprocessor or electronics or what are the things we see today, the RAM and other things, all things, we have done amazingly good and the speed has been amazing. If the same would had happened in automobile industry, today we would have a car from Volkswagen which will go around the world at 1 liter of petrol, and that didn't happen in the automobile industry. I know Tesla is doing something interesting now, but that's something which they wanted to talk about. And then came what we call today, and that's about World Economic Forum says this kickoff has happened in around 2017, 16, 17 is the kickoff which happened of Industry 4.0. And what do they call about? They talk about a lot of things, cyber physical system, where you don't basically differentiate between what systems you're working on because you can't touch and feel it. Like if you have Siri on your iPhone or Alexa at your home, Alexa is in the cloud. Basically, if you're interacting with that on, it is not there. It's a cyber physical system. We have IoTs, Internet of Things, where we are using it extensively for data being generated. We have big data analytics, which is the speed at which data being generated. Big data is all about velocity, volume, and variety of data being used. And also smart manufacturing, where we have all the manufacturing which is happening in a way that it is made for or personalized to the person, to the core. Now, all these things are what they call about the future of how we see the fourth industrial revolution is happening. And it's actually already started showing the impact. I come from a financial services background, and I remember long ago, whenever we used to go to US for any of the corporate visit, we used to always want to go to UBS trading floor in US. They have like a huge trading floor, which you can see. And I was very surprised. I saw this pictures, someone has posted it on LinkedIn, and I just took it. So the source is LinkedIn. And they said that this was the UBS trading floor in 2005. And this is the UBS trading floor in 2016. Can you see the contrast out there? This is when at, you would require the one of the world's biggest trading floor in financial services. People are all there and all the thing, but what has happened? Today with algorithmic trading, I'm sure you've heard about algorithmic trading where you don't require so many traders because there are algorithms which takes care of all these things. It's actually impacting the way we see the uses or what we could call it as the future of these functions. If anyone would have been saying, hey, I would like to make a career as a trader 10 years back, it would have been amazing. But today, if someone says that, then we need to have a look at that in terms of how this can make sense and what are the important area we need to focus on. And that's something which Klaus Schwab, who is the founder and executive of World Economic Forum, he talks about this one very interesting statement, which I would highly recommend you, because if you read the book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, it says there is no, he says, I'm a compiler of information. He's not the author because there are multiple brains who have come together and put their thoughts in this book. And I really like this statement which has been made. He said, we stand on a brink of technological revolution which will fundamentally alter the way we live. That is very much there. Work and relate to one another. And that is the most important thing. The work part, I am actually something which I would like to explain upon. So it says scale, scope, complexity, and transformation, which anything unlike humankind has ever experienced. Now, what does it mean? It basically means that whenever we are dealing with these things, there may be a lot of stuff which can come and impact. And those things has to be managed. But the fourth industrial revolution will have a huge impact on multiple facets of our work. And it is going to be very fast also. I'll use the word term fast because there is a reason for that. Okay. Just give me a moment. I'm just going to change the slide to what I was trying to say from fast. So this is what I was trying to say. Time to reach 100 million customers. Okay. So 100 million customers, when I was saying, this is the speed at which we are talking about. Think of this, just if you have to compare it up, the whole concept, telephone took 75 years before it can actually reach 100 million customers. Web took 7 years to reach 100 million customers. Facebook, social media, which is very, very famous, took 4 years to basically come where we are. Instagram took 2 years, but if you know the famous game, which is Pokemon Go, it was just up in 1 month where we had 100 million customers. And this 100 million customers impacted a kind of a business where we are talking about everything moving. You can also see the evolution of desk, which is there from 1980 to 2014. There have been a lot of change. Machines are the only thing which are there compared to Rolodex and all that kind of stuff. Now, all these things are impacting. So what is in for us in kinetic finance? Let's try to understand that. That's going to be more interesting because kinetic finance, the word is all about kinetic. When we use the word, it's all in motion. I'm sure you've heard about kinetic energy. And that's something which is actually rolling out and it's working it out there. And there are 4 key pillars of this kinetic finance, which is happening today. And they are what we call it as automation and AI. And when I say automation and AI, because in our discussion today, we'll be actually talking at this at 30,000 feet. But what we would like to do is we need to deep dive into that because automation and AI is something which is, there is a lot of misconception about that. When I say there is a lot of misconception about that, let me give you the example why there is a lot of misconception about that. We think artificial intelligence is going to be anything which can take care of that. But you need to understand, artificial intelligence itself is a huge area altogether. There is natural language processing. There are other areas or what we call as cognitive science and other things. But what is going to impact the finance part and audit part is areas like machine learning. And I'll be actually talking about that. And on the automation side, I'm sure all of you have been hearing about RPA and RPA multiple times, robotic process automation. Now, robotic process automation, what we have been seeing it and what is going to come in future is going to be very different. I'll show you some statistics to put my point. See, it's not something new for us. We have been using macros in Excel. That was also a kind of automation or a robotic process automation. But today's time, it has moved to a place where there is a kind of impact which is happening in terms of, I would say the way organization sees use of human resource as well as robotic resources. So that is something which is the first pillar, which is going to have a very big impact on that. We'll deep dive into each of them. The second pillar is called blockchain. And I'm sure you're hearing a lot of things about blockchain. And here I'm not talking about the cryptocurrencies of Bitcoin or Ethereum and all things. I'm just talking about from a finance and what we call it as audit perspective. Blockchain is going to have a huge, huge impact. And when I say a very huge impact, friends, the whole idea behind that is it is going to change the way we do this. And there are reasons for that. Let me give you an example here. I'm not sure how many of you heard about the fundamental problem of double entry systems of bookkeeping. In finance, we all started with the fundamentals that double entry systems of bookkeeping. Today, blockchain is actually coming out something which we call as the triple entry system of bookkeeping. And I'll actually explain it to you also. The reason is there are a lot of use cases which can make, especially intercompany reconciliation, interbranch reconciliations, areas where we want to ensure our tokenization of finance, all of that thing is going to be impact. The third part, which is the pillar of kinetic finance, is cybersecurity and control. I'm sure we have learned a lot of, we used to have IFC, internal financial control, COSO framework, risk management, putting risk control metrics and all things. It's going to go underchange a lot of things because it's actually thinking that all of these things are static. But all of us who are practicing in this area, I'm sure all of you know this term also, that RCMs and other thing which we used to think the controls are static as well as the process are static, that doesn't happen. In real life, you will see that all of that is a very, very dynamic area altogether. With privacy, with requirement of all the cyber controls and organizations moving on to more and more automation, this is one area, especially for audit teams to focus on. And when I say cybersecurity, I'm not talking about core cybersecurity. I'm talking from a controls perspective, the cyber controls or information security controls, which has to be looked into, or I would say not just look into, re-looked into, with a different perspective altogether, is going to be important. And last but not least, I'm sure data analytics is the most abused word today. Where I'm talking about data analytics is a little different. I'm talking about two terms, data mining and data visualization. And I'll maybe try to show you something on that if possible, way time permits. But net, I would like to say here, data analytics has been actually seen everything, even an MIS is data analytics. But what we are talking about is, can data analytics help organization save cost in terms of knowing where the money is being spent? Can we eliminate inefficiencies in our organizations? Can we actually do that? So there are a lot of use cases which are there. I will take maybe five minutes each of the things to take on each of this area, but these four pillars are going to be the fundamentals of what we see the impact of business and finance transformation due to the fourth industrial revolution. And there are some interesting analysis and I would say surveys which are there in the market. I'm just quoting one of the things which was done by PwC. It was very interesting. Which technology will have a biggest impact on finance? So you can say the three things which we have been talking about: AI, RPA, and blockchain. Can you see that in the near term today, as we see? And this survey was done in 2020, something around Jan. And that time they used to think that RPA is going to change a lot because there was a lot of use cases, a lot of areas where robotic process automation can help you reduce your human resource cost, as well as make all the work which used to take maybe 3 days and 5 days coming down to what we call it as a single day work. So all the things were something which was happening in perspective of RPA. But what has happened is basic AI is being used and blockchains will be there. This is near term as we see today. But if you see next 2 to 3 years, we see that the RPA impact is going to go down. And what is going to move is basic and intermediate AI. And when I say intermediate AI, I have some use cases. What about predicting frauds at your FMCG company? What about predicting where the things are going wrong in your T&E expenditures? What about doing a spend analytics if I'm an MNC worldwide, where my spends are going high and what I should be looking at? So those are the things which is basic and intermediate AI which we can use. And with the development, a lot of algorithms which are there right now, and most interesting, freely available, it's going to be a interesting, I would say, term altogether. So I would say that this is how we see that happening. And just see the long term, which is 3 to 5 years, next 5 years, RPA is going to go very less. And the whole movement is going to happen on basic, intermediate, and advanced AI. And when we talk about advanced AI, imagine that a situation where the prediction of your audit universe, I'm sure many of you are from audit background, and your audit universe is automatically will decide which are the item which need to be reviewed by the human auditors, which means looking at the risk ranking and all things, it can actually predict, okay, this areas looks fishy. It can be on Spanish model or any other model which is being, you can put it out there, and the machine basically rely on multiple reviews and try to bring it up there. So these are all what we foresee, and it's already happening. It's not like something kind of a script which we are writing for a sci-fi movie. This is already happening, and why it is happening, that is something which we need to understand, and that is something which has happened also. Let me give you an example here. All of you know Big Basket today, and I hope you have read about them. They're a success story. But how many of you here also are aware of that? That Big Basket opened the same kind of grocery on, through web in the year 2000 2001. Okay, and 2000 2001, when they started this thing, they found something very interesting. They couldn't actually penetrate the market because there was a challenge. The challenge was there was not enough people having computers or mobile phone through which we are actually doing it out there. The same thing has happened. What has making it possible? Data explosion. We have a huge amount of data. Let it be for machine learning, AI, whatever you require. We require to have a huge amount of data, and there is an explosion of data, multiple types of data. I would highly recommend you to check out data.gov or data.gov.in. You'll find that even the government is putting a huge amount of data at some cost, which you can actually use. And this explosion of data allows you to leverage this for many of your decision making part. And that's something which is very interesting. And if you take two areas, both our AI and automation, as well as data analytics, these two main pillars are dependent on data. So when you have a huge amount of data, how does it help us? It basically enables us to have a multiple uses of this data. It can be on finding out anomalies, it could be on figuring it out trends, patterns, or maybe also how actually it's happening. Let's say, for example, your organization has an SOP, step one, step two, step three, step four. But when you do a data mining, you really realize that no one is following the happy part, which is the SOPs. And actually, the transactions are happening in a very different way. So all that things are something which we need to look into. So this is number one part, which we call as explosion of digital data. And the second thing which has happened is this tools and technology. I just took some time to make this slide, and I'll be sharing it with you. And I would highly recommend you to please go through all this technology. Maybe in this technology, I would say around 78% of them are open source, totally freely available. And this technology allows you to do a lot of things. Like what? You can actually process a large volume of data. Like I'm right now using an i7 machine, and with a 1 terabyte hard disk, I can actually process multiple terabytes of data using the concept in Mongo, in Hadoop, which is one of the technology which is there. I'm just giving an example. And there are a lot of these things which allows you to also deal with external data. When I say external data, I am talking about data which was not in your organization, which is to be, I would like to validate what happened there. We used to actually send letters and all the thing, emails to confirmation and all things. But what about if I have external data which is easily available and I can actually use it up? So that becomes a very interesting thing. Dealing with unstructured data, which used to be like PDFs, and let's say I have to have scanned images of some kind of invoices and all the things. All that unstructured data can be actually dealt with, and very powerful statistical modeling tools. I would highly recommend you to go to a site called h2oai.ai, which is basically giving algorithm free of cost. Even there is Elon Musk has opened a company called openai.com, which is basically to give open source artificial intelligence which can be used in different business sources. Now all these things actually adds a lot of value. So that's something which can be working it up. I'll come to my favorite machine learning a little later. The other two are more of real-time analysis, which is trying to see at then and there, what we call as continuous control monitoring, and having a kind of audit happens as and when things switches. This is now possible, and which reduce the impact which organization may have if delay in decision making and all to that. and interactive visualization, like tools like Tableau, Power BI. I would not say they are data analytics tool, but they are good visualization tool. And we all know a picture is worth 1,000 words. So imagine if I have all these things in one place, it actually adds a lot of value for me. Okay. And last but not least, machine learning. This, I think, is like a boon for finance team. Machine learning is basically a kind of a subset of AI, artificial intelligence, which basically tries to make sure the machine learns a kind of from data. So if you know the traditional way how we used to do it, you will write the logic. And I remember when first time I saw computer programming, they used to say that uh, think logically, step one, step two, step three. So it used to be like you think of the logic, you put the logic in the program and you run it on the data, your answer will come. But what machine learning does is reverse. It basically reads the data, and from the data, it basically understand the patterns, and based on that, it will say, oh, this is what is happening. Now that is looks like a sci-fi stuff, but it is doable. It's actually there are a lot of use cases, which I just thought I call it success stories. You know, where people are using machine learning for identification of fraud and revenue leakage in accounts payable. That's something which I'm sure everyone can connect to. P2P and accounts payable is one area where everyone knows what are the risks which any organization faces. Bad debts, prediction of customer default. You can actually predict which are the customers which looking at the pattern, like multiple things which happens. They extract more credit at that point of time. They are not good at payment or they're not paying on time. All that things are good predictions of what which customer may default. Spend analytics. This is one very interesting thing, and you can read lot of articles which are there on that, but I would highly recommend because this is one area which can help organization optimize their cost. When you're doing the procurement across different geography, different sectors, different thing, you can actually, it's not humanly possible to basically do it because as humans, we can actually see things in maximum 2 dimensions. Or if you have some additional glasses on all thing, maybe 3 dimension, what we call it 3Ds. But a machine, as a computer, they can actually see the same information in n dimension. When I say n dimension, it can be 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, anything which you can actually think of. So that's something helps us to basically see the procurement spends in a very different perspective altogether. Okay. Then coming to general ledger code review. When I say general ledger code review, it's all about what we call it as real-time automated review of GL code, which is, are you posting the right GL codes? Many times we say, oh yeah, we are doing it, but you all know, let it be SAP, let it be Oracle. Many a times, depending on the complexity of business, it is also possible that the codes which you are using is not right. And it may be because of printing and stationery or just printing. I'm just giving example, which code it should be booked, the expense should be booked to. So it can be actually reviewed out there. Collusion with vendors, conflict of interest, what we call it as. These are the things which you can actually review with using big data and machine learning together, which can predict a lot of information, which can be taken care of in terms of how we deal with that. Banks are using it extensively now. In fact, in Basel 3, it is mandatory that they should use AI and machine learning, and they are predicting non-performing assets and analyzing the root cause why this account is becoming a non-performing asset and doing it. Why I just use the word success stories here? All these things what you're seeing is not something a concept. This has been tried, tested, and they're all live in most of the organizations which are working on this. And the last but not least, I hope all of you know, travel and expense claims. These are one area which is voluminous, and it doesn't make sense to go for like some 3,000, 5,000. But is it possible that it can be all put through a lot of machines which can actually process them and bring out all these things which is required out there? So this kind of things can add a lot of value. So I just thought I'll just share some of the things from data analytics and AI and machine learning combined. It's two pillars. I just combine it together just to give you one flavor in terms of how we are dealing with that. So coming to analytics, what are the question it can answer? Literally, it talks about three things. The hindsight, insight, and foresight. So hindsight is basically what happened. And when we talk about insight, it is what is the problem? What are the challenges? What actions are needed out there? And why is this happening also? And what if this trend continues? Is there a thing we can do about this? So that would be the foresight. So it's something which is past data I'm talking about, that will be hindsight. Something I talk about what we are doing now and what we can actually do it better. That would be what we call is from insight. And finally, the foresight is the futuristic approach of what if the trend continues. There is a kind of a very interesting book, I'm sure all of you have read about your next 5 moves, and it all talks about that if you have to think like a grandmaster or a chess champion, you should think 5 moves ahead, and that's something where foresight helps you, and organizations would try to require it up. Imagine knowing, I'll give you one example, very interesting. You have heard about time series in statistics, which we all use. And I found one organization which is very amazingly, they're using time series to basically pick up which subsidies to audit and which area to audit. Like, for example, what they do is they run the time series saying that if you take the last 3 years, data, this year the sales should be this much. This should be the performance of the organization. If the variation from the performance is more than 10%, then they said, okay, it means we need to check this organization or this subsidy, why it is not happening as it is supposed to be done. So this is all about the foresight and why the best that can happen and how we can deal with that. So friends, these are the first two pillar. I just thought I'll quickly give you a brief of that because we have a detailed program later. But right now we were just trying to give you a kind of brief in terms of what it works on and how we can actually use it better, all this concept. Then going to the next piece, blockchain. And I'm sure you're hearing a lot about blockchain everywhere. I really like this statement which was made in Harvard Business Review by some of the top brains in finance. They say the blockchain will do to financial system what internet did to media. And when we say internet did to media, I'm sure all of you have heard about post-internet users. We have moved to all the OTT platforms. So all these OTT platforms which are there, these are becoming like standard across the board. And that's something, same thing is going to happen to the financial system because of blockchain. So what is this blockchain? See, fundamentally from the old days, I hope you remember this kind of ledger used to be there, the old times. Some of you would have come across this. Some of you would have never seen it or heard about this. Now, this one is basically a kind of a ledger. Okay. Now, this ledger, we used to be a custodian of ledgers, but there are a challenge. Think of blockchain as a database which cannot be tampered with easily. And why do I say that? Let me give an example. Let it be SAP, let it be Oracle, any other systems which are there today. We keep some controls on them so that no one can actually change the database. No one has access to that. But functionally, it is very much possible that I can go from the backend and change the information in the database. So how can I make first a database which is not tamperable? Point number one. A ledger copy is maintained on the database and which can be used by multiple stakeholders. And third, as I was telling you, the triple entry systems of bookkeeping. One of the fundamental of problem with double entry systems of bookkeeping, all of you know that, I will actually pass an entry saying that in the books of X, this is the entry. You will pass an entry in your book saying in the books of Y, this is the entry. Because there are two different people passing these entries, there is a challenge which comes, which is called reconciliation. And reconciliation is a big issue. Think of that between interbank, intercompany, bank with the company, it is always an issue. And we are not talking about some small line items, we are talking about millions of line items which are there. What if you can actually put it into a blockchain, which means a database which is replicated across board, which means everyone has a copy of the database. Second, it is tamper proof, which means once an entry is done, you can't tamper. If you try to tamper with that, it will give it an alert and we can actually figure it out. Okay, this has been done with. And the third, which is very interesting, it is single source of truth. So you don't have to do this fighting of reconciliation. Similarly, there are other many areas where there were inefficiencies, which can be also easily taken care of that by blockchain. So just to give you a little genesis of this, Bitcoin, the concept of Bitcoin, if you don't, it started in 2008. They published a paper, and post that Satoshi Nakamoto. In the paper, they wanted to have that if I'm having a cryptocurrency, what is the best way of keeping a track of who is giving to that? So they wanted to have a ledger. And I had 100 currency, I gave one Bitcoin to that person. But they wanted to have this, what we call it as the ledger, tamper proof, because it was an automated system. So when they designed this thing, they call it as a blockchain, and they had some checks and balances using, if you know, the public key and private key, digital signature, hashing, and other technologies, which is peer-to-peer and other things. So I'm just giving a very high-level idea here. I know it's pretty, if you start discussing it, it'll take like days together. So they actually basically put it up for that. And what came out was a database, which is tamper-proof, which is replicated multiple places, and which has a kind of entry upon that. And then they said, okay, this is interesting. Till 2014, no one actually realized the importance of that. In 2014-15, people started saying, okay, this is interesting. I'm not interested in Bitcoin, but I'm very interested in blockchain. And if you go to Niti Aayog, also website of Government of India, they are actually saying it is going to change the governance because you will have a single source of truth. Imagine if any one of you are buying land, how much problem it goes through. We don't even know that whether the person from whom you're buying the land has a title on that land or not. If this kind of challenges are still there, which means we don't have a single source of truth. So what can be done for doing that? Now there, blockchain comes into picture. So what it is basically a kind of auditable database, a database which is very secured by use of hash function, which is, I'll just give you like, think of cryptography to some extent. So which means it is temper resistance and integrity is maintained. It uses digital signatures, and there is a consensus mechanism which is there. And the second part, which is very interesting, is it has a timestamp append only log, which means you can just add to this. You can just append new things to them. And they have, because they have to have multiple people using the same database, and they will have a copy of that, there will be a consensus protocol, which is nothing but ensuring that everything which is there is managed out there. And you can actually do it. If I have to very crudely explain you, very simple. Imagine these are the blocks, block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4, and you are keeping the blocks out there. In every block, you have put it in the house. If anyone tries to change block number 74, after it has been done, then there is going to be a challenge. In that kind of scenario, I'll come to know that someone is trying to tamper it, and I can have a trust of safety, which will ensure it up that not everyone can actually look into that. What are the things which is happening? And you can't cheat. Think of many places. It can be from fund transfer. It could be somewhere where we can talk about banking. There are a lot of inefficiencies banking systems also till today. I'm sure you heard about this a term which is called correspondence banking, which means if I have to transfer some money from my US account to India account, it will not happen directly because they will not talk to each other. It's possible Wells Fargo will be talking to Bank of America. Bank of America will talk to someone else, and all these things will happen. Okay, so this kind of environment, what happens is they will always try to talk about the idea behind how I can actually manage it up. So this becomes very important, and that is what blockchain allows you to do. It basically helps you to have what we call it as one trust protocol. You have a protocol that you can trust this thing, and without any kind of challenge, you have one place where all these things can be dealt with. So this is how blockchain manages it. Coming to the fourth one, which I was talking about, cyber. Cyber is one area which is impacting not just finance and audit, it is actually impacting even going concern of the organization. Because if you all understand, if there are some issues from your cyber perspective, there are a lot of businesses today, they can totally go out of, they can be, there can be an issue out there. And we used to have this concept of BCP DRP. Yes, that has gone a change, but what has, that was traditionally being done, but what has impacted a lot today, which I would just like to share with you. First and foremost is there is an impact on the financial assertions, completeness, integrity, all these things which used to be assuming at that point of time is something which we can't do that. There are attacks, you are reading about cyber attacks which are happening. There are changes like, I'm sure ransomwares and all things. These are all actually indirectly or directly impacting the financial assertions. So as finance leaders, it becomes very important to have a track of that. We used to actually keep cybersecurity and controls to whom? Usually the CIOs and the IT team and everyone. But of late, this is one thing which we have to bring it back to us. Then we had integrity issues. When I say integrity issues, I'm talking about your system integrity. With more and more in the fourth industrial revolution movement, like I'll just give you an example here. There is now a new service offering which is being done by many people, which is called RPA audit, robotic process automation audit, which means how you have implemented your robotic process. Is it working fine? Is that, rule set has been properly done? Now that is fairly easy because it is step one, step two, step three, step four in RPA. But what is the most interesting thing which I came across just around 1 year back? Do you know there is something called as right now Algorithm Auditors Association? So there is something AAA, they call it. It's a Chicago-based one. Lady is there. She has set up this one. And what they're auditing is algorithms. Algorithms, all of you know. If anyone is not aware, I'll just quickly give you. Algorithms basically means, you have seen a plus b whole square is equal to a square plus b square plus 2ab. Now, this is a kind of a, mathematical function. Now, algorithms are used everywhere. Like when you go to Amazon, you buy something, it will say people who bought this also bought this. Now, that's an algorithm which is actually predicting it. Or you can actually see that in the entries what we are doing, it will predict, okay, this is what you have to do. Now, there were some programs which was written where algorithms was biased. Actually, I'll explain you. So in California, the police department wanted to have an automated system which will basically say that which locality our police patrol cars, the police have their patrol cars, they should be put into which locality. Now they put a kind of a system which will say, okay, this is the location you should go and stand your car, and from the GPS it will get all the information. So the idea was to see the area where there is more crime. You should have a police car, and if it is a police car present there, the number of crimes goes down. But what they started seeing very interestingly is all the cars are being sent to black neighborhood and not in the white neighborhood. And what is happening is when the weightage was given on the algorithm, there were multiple factors like how many crimes has happened in this area, frequency of crime, the level of crimes, what kind of neighborhood is there, white neighborhood or a black neighborhood, and the weightage was given more on the black neighborhood. So what happens then? There is an integrity issue. What you are actually thinking your machine is working as, it is giving a garbage in, garbage out. It was sending all the people to the black neighborhood, whereas it should be actually doing a calculation in way of where the more crimes are happening and taking care of that. So this is another area which is impacting that, whether what you have implemented, is it working fine? There has to be audit to be done for that. And that can be another areas to look into. And last but not least, the privacy and compliances issues. I'm sure you've heard about GDPR. There is a India specific privacy law which is coming very soon. The draft is out. And in this kind of challenges, what we see, you will notice that there is going to be a lot more challenges from new compliances because these are becoming dynamic and organizations has to be agile to be able to take all these things. So to summarize what I wanted to take, all of you, where I started from. The fundamental idea today is, friends, that whether we like it or not, fourth industrial revolution is changing or impacting finance and audit functions drastically. Second, the speed as what it goes and happens. And you can actually refer one very interesting material which just came just now on October 20th. World Economic Forum released a report called the Future of Job Report, and I would highly recommend you to basically read it. They had actually in the 2018 report, they have predicted things are going to change from 2025. But in the latest report, what they are saying that after what we had in Corona, epidemic, there is this change has accelerated. In fact, I was thinking it will slow down, but as per World Economic Forum, and they are seeing the worldwide data, it has accelerated. The impact is coming up faster. So, which means when we are talking about Pokemon Go and saying that, hey, you know what, it will reach 100 million in 1 month, the speed at which we are going to see other changes are going to be much, much faster. The third point, which is there is finance and audit functions is going to be impacted in a way what we call as the kinetic finance conundrums. And that kinetic finance has four key pillars. And it starts with, friends, what we call it as your AI and automation. And when I say AI and automation, I'm basically focusing on RPA, robotic process automation, and machine learning, because AI is a huge area and the focus from our side is more on machine learning. And as I told you, machine learning is the same concept. How do you make a kid learn? A kid would basically see that if I ask him that he's playing with a matchbox and I say, don't play with that, do you think the kid would listen to me? No. But the moment it burns a finger once, do you think he will, or he or she will play it with again? Maybe not. So from that perspective, it becomes very, very important to understand the use of that. And AI and ML, what we call it as, is going to have a big impact. Automations, RPA is going to be a huge impact. Then comes our second part, which is data analytics. I told you, with the explosion of data, every organization has huge amount of data which is available to them. And this data can be used effectively in terms of getting decisions, making better plans, strategies, and seeing what are the things which are happening. Like it can be cost optimization, your spend analytics, all of the things. The third part which it goes to impact is on blockchain. And as I told you, blockchain is really something which is catching up, and organizations are doing it in that. In the banking sectors, in the corporate sectors, we see a lot of use cases which is going. It can cut down on the time, and it's basically just nothing but a database which has some amazing feature, and it can be implemented by finance leaders to see what are the things which we can actually add value to. And last but not least, on cybersecurity, areas of integrity, which I talked about in terms of algorithm auditing, ensuring that your financial assessments are right, completeness, integrity, all of that things are managed. Privacies and compliance issues are going to be another areas which are impacting that. So, in nutshell, as business and finance leaders, all of us has to see what we can do. There is always a famous saying, as I told you in the beginning of my session: change before you are forced to change. And that is the key to basically, instead of being reactive to the fourth industrial revolution, which has already started, we should be proactive in terms of how we can actually deal with it. So that's from my side. We have a little bit of paucity of time. Any questions, any query, feel free to let me know.
Everybody, all of you can post your queries in the Q&A part. So Anand, a couple of questions
Yes.
here. So as a finance professional, say I'm there's a question coming in saying that I'm a finance professional who's primarily been in the management accounting, and a bit of internal audit scenarios. So what is the one skill in this era I should pick up?
Okay, so I would say in that case, one of the area which is in the management finance and areas which have been doing it, I would see so the first or the important pillar is on automation in AI and data analytics together, which is like the two main pillar which are there on which everything is built up. I would say all the fours are going to impact a lot, but Sudeshna, just to answer your question, the most important one which we see and which is transforming at a very fast pace, and everyone is seeing the value of that in terms of how it has to be done, that I would say is where we call it up, data analytics part, as well as going through areas of like AI and ML, which is going to have a big impact for everyone to come. So that is what I would suggest them to pick up in the beginning.
Thanks, Anand. Anand, the next one is on like, do you think that the appetite of Indian companies to change or adopt this thing is lower than the ones who are subsidiaries of, say, MNC?
That's a good question, Suresh. I would say every organization has their DNA, and there are a lot of I would say Indian MNCs who have been in forefront in terms of doing it. I come from Goldman Sachs, and I remember in Goldman Sachs every year when they used to publish their annual report, there used to be a director statement which was very interesting. I remember in 2005 or 6, Goldman Sachs used to spend something around 6 billion on IT and transformation. They used to call it IT and transformation that time. And there used to be a kind of a statement by the director. They said, we are spending so much of money because we would like to be ahead of the competition. So it can be, there are organizations, I would say, in India, Indian organizations, which are really leaders in adoption of all of the things. I personally know a couple of them who have been adopting this at a breakneck speed, and they are actually experimenting it up. And that experimentation is required. On the same side, many a time we always used to see, let other people do it, let them become, use those things and check for themselves. And then if it is successful there, we'll try it out. We have both side of people, but organization, in fact, even Harvard Business Review, I was reading, the difference between great companies and average companies is all about great companies always experiment with new ideas. They basically try it up. They will say that, okay, does it make sense for it? But they're also very fast also. If there is issues, they will change the, course very fast. So that agile mindset is something which is very important, I would say. But yes, both the places, just to summarize my point, I would say both kind of organizations are actually looking at that. And today, I would say for Indian entities, this is actually a boon, because what happens is, because we adopted IT little late compared to our peers all over the world, our IT systems are more, I would say, young in terms of the use and all things. So we don't have the legacy system. I'm sure many of you would have heard this term, oh, this is a legacy application, which is a COBOL application, which will be there in a lot of large MNCs, which is running for last 20, 25 years. So that gives us a kind of an edge in terms of being more agile and take that forward. Yeah.
Thanks, Anand. Last two questions which have come in, like, let us kind of, and then so we are seeing the time up, but let us take these questions.
Sure.
So why is, do you think the automation is growing as fast in the bookkeeping world as you would have expected it to?
Yes, actually, it's actually going much faster than what I was expecting also, Sudeshna. Today, what we see is, RPA is nowadays available like at every nook and corner of organizations today. Even organizations which were not very, tech savvies are adapting that because they have seen the benefit of that. Having said that, I would say automation and AI, if you remember that analysis I showed you, this is like the basic automation, which means it's like, just trying to make sure the repetitive tasks are automated. But there are a lot of, now people are having an appetite for having or looking at AI or automation, which can actually add value, which can actually, ensure that there is something which is over and above of repetitive tasks. Because That part has been already built already, the fundamentals has been already being used, and there are hundreds of RPA tools. And in fact, nowadays there is a new term which is that most of the RPA tools are becoming free of cost, or over the counter. People are just sharing it out there. But what is missing is the intelligent automation. That is something which is now going to pick up, and we have the speed of the basic automation was fast, but intelligent automation will take some time when we can see the benefit of this.
Fair enough, Anand. But do you still feel that the shared services are adopting it, but finance teams as such within organizations are not quite adopting it that fast?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually, Suleshna, because that's something which I am seeing as a trend all across the thing. So the moment organizations have their shared services put into one place, they have the scale at which they can actually do it, and they are really adapting RPAs and automations to the core, because they know the benefit which can happen, and it also helps us them to optimize the cost part. But finance across the board are still, I would say, this is maybe my thought process, but we have been always told to be conservative in finance. There's a kind of principle in finance that you should basically not plan for all the benefits which are realized and all things, but you should plan for all the expenses to be booked. But it's a conservatism as a fundamental in accounting, what we have been taught, and that makes most of the finance leaders very conservative in their approach. So yes, you're right in terms of saying that most of the time finance functions per se are not adapting them at the speed at which it should be. But shared services, because that is their core competencies and all things, they are very fast in terms of adapting that and getting the benefit also out of that. They can see themselves that the number of headcounts which they wanted, and now what they can actually do with it's actually do. So the FTEs are less now, and they are actually having better optimized processes and less issues out there. So that makes sense for organizations and the top leadership for all this.
Thanks, Anand. And the final question.
Yes.
So, how do you see the internal role of a CFO evolve in the 3 to 5 years time frame which we looked at, or the external role of an auditor? The internally the CFO, and the externally the when we call about the third party auditor. How do you feel that due to all these things, how will their roles evolve?
Okay, that's a very nice question, because I was talking to one of my mentor a week back on the same thing, with that what do we see in the future, and he gave me an example. I'm just sharing it up with is he's Mr. CN Raghupati is head of India business for Infosys, and he told me this. He said, you remember the time when you used to have doctors who just used to walk down to a doctor, he used to just give you some basic test, and he said, okay, you have this illness, and you can take this medication and it will be done. Now, but if you go today for any kind of consultation with a doctor, and I'm sure all of us has experiences, they will ask for some 6 7 reports, ECG and this and XYZ, the blood report and all the things, and based on that they will do the decision making. Now, I'm not saying that the old doctors were good and this are bad, anything as that, but what is happening is now they have access to the state of art technology. They can take more better decisions in terms of, instead of going through in a blind, or with experience they were able to do that. Now, same thing I am actually seeing the role of the CFO functions. Especially CFOs are always the leader who actually can lead the transformation, because transformation is not, I would say, very easy, and neither it is very changes in the initial. There is a kind of a saying, changes in beginning are hard and messy in the middle, and they are amazing in the last. But the messy part, someone has to lead it up, someone has to anchor that up. So the role which we are seeing for CFOs now is as a change agent. They have to go in their organization. Either they can just sit on this and saying, okay, we'll see when it comes, or they can be the change agent and try to work toward it. And it will take some time in terms of doing it up. But now that they have so many different tools, techniques, and technology which is available, if we don't use it, this would be a criminal waste of a good information which can be taken in decision making. So I would say slowly we will see the dynamism of what we call as a CFO is going to increase, because they will have access to more information. They will have access to better research. They would have better analysis which they can do, and based on that, I'm sure they will be able to do a very good job. So future is going to be good, but yes, on the same side, a lot of things which we are doing right now, which are very mundane tasks, all that things are going to go away. So it will be a strategic decision making which will be more focused on, and instead of going to day-to-day stuff and what's happening here and now thing, the role is going to be changing. So that's my 2 cents on this, Reshna.
Thank you, Anand. And I take this opportunity to thank all the audience. You've been excellent participants. Thank you so much. We shall be sharing with you the slides for this webinar. And on the chat window, you can join us on LinkedIn and Facebook and give your views on this particular webinar. And please watch out for our workshops, which are coming on this area very, very soon. So thank you, Anand, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, everyone. It was great.